I am in the Procreate app right now. So what I did is I just brought in that PNG into Procreate, and I have it right here. It has a transparent background. And so I just have the typography. And I love Procreate because it has this layering system just like Photoshop. And so I'm going to add a new layer here, and I'm not going to go through all the details of Procreate, but I'm just going to kind of show you, we're just kind of doing a demonstration to show you how you can use a digital drawing app to create this illustration. So I'm trying to pick out a nice color for the sky, you know, kind of a purple navy blue color, just similar to what we emulated in Photoshop. And so now I need to pick a really good brush. And so I'm here in my brush library, I'm in the artistic brushes. I find this turpentine really good because as you brush over it, it kind of changes. It emulates real turpentine brush and kind of makes it look kind of watery, almost like a watercolor. So I'm going to pick this turpentine brush and kind of see what kind of effect we have here. Of course, you could change the brush sizes and make them bigger or smaller. And you can also change the transparency on that bottom slider. So let's go ahead and give this a try and see how it looks. So I'm just painting it on. Of course, you can always click on the back button if you don't like how it looks. And then we can increase that brush size, maybe even darken it a little bit because it was a little light, and kind of see how it brushes on. So I'm going to be brushing it on here. And you're going to be noticing how when I continue to brush over what's already been brushed, it gets a little darker. It kind of adds this layered, rich look to it. And you get to see those nice big brush strokes, which is exactly what I was wanting to accomplish. So just continuing to layer this, and I may need to even bring in another brush and put it on top and kind of see how all these brushes layer together to create that unique brush stroke and textures. So I'm just trying out some different brushes here. And so right now you can create a new layer, and you can just continue to layer different brushes on top of each other until you get kind of the texture that you're going for. So I'm going to do a little bit of a darker purple, and I'm really liking the way those brush strokes are more noticeable on this particular brush. And if you brush it on too much or it's a little too strong, I'm going to show you a way how you can open up your layers panel and lighten it just like you would in Photoshop. You have control of each one of your layers. So I have the layer the new layer I just created with a new brush, and I can click on that little N, and you have all these options just like layering styles. I can reduce the opacity of it so it's not so strong, but there's also blending modes, lighten, contrast, a lot of similar things that you'll notice in Photoshop, you'll notice in the Procreate app. So there's a lot of control you have over each one of your layers. So right now it's time to do our cityscape. And I'm trying to find the right brush to paint that in. I want to kind of have a dry brush. So I'm just kind of going through some of my brushes to kind of see what kind of texture would look really good for the buildings. I want to have a little bit more detail on the buildings, so I want to have a smaller brush or a brush that would look good there. So I'm just kind of trying to find that perfect brush, and I think eventually I end up doing the dry ink brush, which is in my inking category. I thought that would probably work really well. So I'm going to go ahead and select the dry ink. Kind of see how that looks as I start to create the buildings. And what I'm going to do is I'm pulling up on Google several photos of New York skyline so I can do some very distinct buildings. And for this example, I have another example that's more detailed that I spent about an hour on. But for this example I'm showing you where I'm filming live, I'm going to do a lot more simplistic of building structures than I did for my final. But I'm just kind of sketching, kind of getting an idea of the New York skyline, what kind of buildings there are. It's always great to use a reference photo, and I'm just drawing little antennas and just little things to help give the building some characteristics. But I'm still trying to keep a loose illustration style. I don't want to be too formal or too exact. I want to kind of have it be childlike and a little playful the way I draw the lines. So just continuing to sketch the skyline here with our dry brush, and eventually I'm going to be filling all this in. Increasing the brush size and filling all of this in. So I'm just going back over the outlines of everything, making sure I'm filling any holes in that I made in my original sketches. So now I'm increasing my brush size, and I'm going to be painting on and filling everything in. Everything down below is going to be black, so we can have a nice contrast with our nice light blue sky and our very dark buildings below. It'll give the whole piece a nice division. We have a little bit of a lighter top and darker background. So I'm just filling in everything. And it's going to take a little while, so I may end up speeding this up for you guys, but just painting with the brush and changing the brush size, trying to get that texture nice. And I like the little natural holes this brush gives me. It gives it more of that kind of paintbrush authentic feel to it. It's not perfectly filled in like you would do in Photoshop, where you would just fill in the whole layer. It's got those little nice holes in it that give it character. I could spend quite a bit of time, and I have another version that's a little bit more complete that I'm just going to use. But that's kind of the general idea of what we're doing. We also want to do the ribbon. So I'm going to be creating a new layer for the ribbon. And we want to make it the same color as this. So I'm just going to kind of hold my thumb or my pointer finger here and release, and I'm able to kind of grab that same color. So now we want to get a more fine-tuned pen, maybe a studio pen, and we're going to decrease the size. Let's see how that looks. And we're just going to draw a rough sketch over kind of the ribbon coming in and out. So we'll do the edge of the ribbon here. And we're just going to have the ribbon go around. It can wrap around. This is just trying to figure out where the ribbon is going to go. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just determining whether it goes in and or out. Have the ribbon wrap around New York City, just like this. And that can go around, and that can just end right here. You know, each time I do this, it ends up being a little bit different. So this is kind of your rough outline. What I'm going to do is reduce the transparency on this. That's just a guide for me. That's not a final sketch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new layer. You can see how many layers really come into play here. I'm going to put that at the bottom. Now I'm going to be able to, I have my guide. So now I can be a little bit more picky about exactly how this is illustrated. I know that's just the guide. What I'm going to do is I'm going to paint over buildings. So if I have a building going behind one, I'm going to paint a little bit over, and I'm just going to take the eraser tool and be able to erase what goes over the building if it's going to be going around it. So I'm just going to go through and trace all of this. I already have another sample I'm going to use for a final, but I'm just kind of showing you how I go about doing this. So now I can be pickier, and then I can delete the layer that was going to help me, and then it just gets a little bit more refined. And you keep doing this until you get that final ribbon that you're happy with. So if I didn't have a plan, if I didn't know kind of where to go, it's harder to do a final illustration when you don't have that plan of where the ribbon's going to go, because you're trying to think about where the ribbon's going to go, and you're also trying to illustrate it. So I'm not going to finish that for the sake of time. I already have one we're going to be bringing into Photoshop that's complete. I want to show you kind of how to do the sky. It's going to be the same thing we've done before. We're going to add a little moon. So I'm just going to add a little light yellow to this. I'm going to draw a little quick moon. Here we have the same color that we had before. We're just doing a moon. And we can even use the same texture that we used, or the same brush we used for the city. So I'm going to go down and get the city. Oh, we did dry ink. We're just going to draw ourselves a moon. I'm going to draw stars as well. If you want to fill that in, you can. I kind of like keeping the texture there. And then we could do the stars. So we could do a white color. And of course, the theme of this is creating a new layer. Just do little stars. We can make these skinny, little star, making them different sizes. Some are big, some are small. Kind of sprinkling them about in a random order. If you mess up, just go back. And also, if you mess up, you can just take the eraser tool and just erase it. I love digital apps. This is so much fun. Kind of feel like Bob Ross teaching you how to paint. You happy little stars. It's really kind of fun process. I wish I was a better illustrator. I wish I could do this full time. I would. But graphic design is more my game. So I'm going to finish the ribbon, wrapping that around. What I would do is I would take the eraser tool, make a really small brush size. I go around and I'm just erasing those areas. Let me go back to the ribbon layer. And I'm just erasing those areas of the ribbon, just like that, so they look like a smooth transition around the buildings. So this is definitely rough. I have another version I'm going to bring in, but what I'm going to do is we don't need the text layer anymore. We have that in Photoshop already, and we'll complete that later. But let's say this is a complete one. We're just going to go ahead and export this. We're going to go to Share, and I like to do a Photoshop file, and there's a good reason for that. It's going to export it in layers for us. It's going to keep our layers. We're going to need to use that to intertwine our type and our illustration together. So I'm saving as a Photoshop file. I'm going to bring in the other illustration that's complete already, and I'll see you back in Photoshop.